Upon returning to the territory, Lagertha announced plans to prepare for a western expedition, and the crowd was thrilled to hear the news. Rollo becomes Bjorn's mentor, and he gets even better. Soon, it was time for the expedition. Everyone worked together to prepare. The fleet became more powerful than ever. Horic intentionally rowed the same ship as Floki. Clearly, he was tempting Floki to join him in opposing Ragnar. However, Floki didn't reveal his attitude easily. Ragnar revealed to Lagertha the news from the seer that Athelstan was still alive. This voyage seemed extraordinarily smooth, and after a while, they finally arrived in Wessex. Rather than launching an attack directly, they chose to set up camp by the seaside. Horic quickly noticed that Thorstein, Ragnar's man, wasn't in the camp. Ragnar indicated that he had sent Thorstein to deliver a message to Ecbert and to discuss about the handing over of the land. However, Horic didn't want to negotiate. He held a grudge against Ecbert for the previous attack and was hoping to seek revenge. He felt discontented with Ragnar's unilateral decisions, thinking his leadership position was being challenged. Upon seeing this, Floki quickly stepped forward to appease Horic. Not long after, Ethelwulf arrived at the camp. He carries Athelstan's signet ring, showing that they are willing to negotiate peace. Ragnar is pleased to see the familiar bracelet and agrees to peace talks. After receiving Ragnar's reply, Ethelwulf left the camp with his guards to report back. However, they were ambushed halfway through their journey. The attackers were led by Erlender, and they didn't take Ethelwulf's life. Their goal was to disrupt the peace talks and provoke a war. Ecbert is furious when he learns of the situation, and he sees it as the Vikings giving him a war cry. He immediately sent a message to King El and planned to wage war against the Vikings as soon as the reinforcements arrived. Just as Horic led the team towards the enemy, a large number of English cavalry suddenly appeared. Ragnar immediately arranged the troops for defense, while Horic, indifferent to the situation, continued to charge forward. Ragnar ordered the construction of a shield wall, hoping to withstand the irresistible impact. After the first charge of the English cavalry, the Vikings suffered heavy losses. Immediately after, the English cavalry began their second attack. Because the terrain was wide open and the enemy was cavalry, their shield wall was rendered ineffective under the huge impact. The alliance with another country led to a substantial increase in strength, and the disparity in power was immediately apparent. Even with the valor of the Viking warriors, they were exhausted at this point. Rollo, wielding his battle axe, courageously struck at the enemy. Due to the large number of enemies, he was unable to avoid them and eventually fell, mercilessly trampled by English cavalry. Seeing this, Ragnar was extremely anxious and immediately planned to rush over to rescue Rollo. With Thorstein's assistance, Ragnar rode a warhorse to rescue Rollo. However, just as he was about to act, enemy cavalry charged again. Considering the overall situation, he had no choice but to painfully order the entire army to retreat. But he still didn't want to give up on Rollo, so he rushed towards the enemy troops alone. Ragnar was quickly surrounded by the enemy, but luckily Bjorn noticed Ragnar. With the assistance of father and son, they managed to break through the siege. However, Rollo was left on the battlefield. English soldiers began to clear the battlefield, killing off all the surviving Vikings. Fortunately, Athelstan found Rollo in time, saving him from certain death. When Ecbert learned that this was Ragnar's brother, he ordered that his life be spared. This battle dealt a heavy blow to the Vikings, but Horic failed to wake up, instead pushing the blame for the failure onto fate. Ragnar, unable to bear any longer, rebuked Horic, leaving him speechless. At this time, Ecbert and King Ecbert began to celebrate their victory. However, Ecbert didn't let the victory go to his head. He believed that endless warfare was not a long-term solution, and so he had bigger plans. Ecbert sent Athelstan to the Viking camp to negotiate. Athelstan told Ragnar that Rollo was still alive, but was gravely wounded. Ragnar is mildly relieved to hear this and agrees to talk peace. Then Ragnar escorted Athelstan away. Knowing that Horic would attack Athelstan on the road, he shielded Athelstan with his own body.
So have you returned to your faith? Renounced the house?
I wish it was so simple. In the gentle fall of rain from heaven I hear my God, but in the thunder I still hear Thor. That is my agony.
I hope that someday, our gods can become friends.
Ragnar puts the bracelet on Athelstan's hand and then says goodbye reluctantly. The next day Floki and others went to the peace talks. But Floki was as opposed to the peace talks as Horic. Floki says Ragnar's actions will only put everyone in danger. He asked Ragnar why he had to save Rollo. He had betrayed Ragnar and killed Arn. Floki asks Ragnar why he trusts Athelstan so much. Ragnar no longer trusts Floki at this time.
You talk about trust. You? What are you saying?
I am a trustworthy person.
Both parties sat down at the negotiation table, and Quenthrith arrived. Since Ecbert didn't understand the language of the Vikings, he had Athelstan act as a translator. Ecbert expressed that he could hand over Rollo to Ragnar and offered them a large amount of land and treasure, but hoped they would help the princess claim the throne. Ragnar and Lagertha both accepted Ecbert's terms, while Horic was ignored. Ragnar invited Athelstan to return to Kattegat with him. Athelstan gladly accepted. Ragnar kept his promise, leaving a portion of Viking soldiers with Quenthrith. Although they lost the battle, they gained a great deal of treasure and land. Ragnar was loved by his people for the countless times he put himself in harm's way for the good of his tribe. His popularity had even surpassed that of King Horic. A few days later, Horic brought his wife and children to Ragnar's territory. Ragnar hosted a feast for Horic's family. At the feast, Horic announced to everyone that from now on, he and Ragnar were equals. He even wanted to form a marital alliance with Ragnar to strengthen their relationship. Siggy was constantly taking care of Rollo, but he was still unable to move. Floki picked some poisonous mushrooms on the back mountain and fed them to Rollo. The next day Rollo woke up, but he still couldn't walk, which made Rollo feel like a useless person. Siggy told him not to despair, but Rollo said it had nothing to do with her. Siggy went to the market where Horic gave her a dagger. He asked Siggy to kill Ragnar's children before sunset. Seeing Siggy's hesitation, Horic stated that he would marry her and make her a queen once she succeeded. Night fell, and Ragnar started the tribal feast. Floki went to Ub and asked him to bring food to Torstein but to tell nobody. Torstein, trusting his brother, swallowed the mushrooms without hesitation. However, not long after, Torstein died miserably at the feast. Torstein's sudden death shocked everyone. Bjorn tries to examine Torstein's body and is stopped by Floki. Floki's eyes were filled with sorrow as he promised Bjorn that he would find the murderer. This time he finally won Horic's trust. Horic visited Floki's home, highly praising Floki's performance, and revealed his plan as well, that he planned to ambush Ragnar and his family the next day. As night fell, several warships filled with soldiers slowly docked. Erlender was in charge of welcoming them, while Horic gathered his army outside the village. At the moment, the horde looks defenseless, and they could easily break in. The few guards couldn't resist their advance and all fell prey to the knives. Only Rollo held Siggy's battle axe tightly in his hand, and the whole tribe seemed like an empty city. At this moment, Lagertha was leading her followers to storm Horic's residence. In the duel between the two warrior women, Lagertha, being a stronger fighter, emerged victorious. Horic's children were left to her subordinates. By now, Horic had stepped into Ragnar's Earl's mansion. Only when he saw the people sitting in the hall did he realize everything. Horic's men were falling one by one. When he saw Floki, he understood that everything was a trick. Floki never betrayed Ragnar. Looking at Ragnar, Horic knew what his end would be. He just hoped that Ragnar would spare his son. In the end, Siggy stepped forward and handed the dagger that Horic had given her to Ragnar. Ragnar never thought of betrayal, nor did he have ambition for the throne. What he detested the most was the fratricidal killing among his people, and all he wanted was for the Vikings to lead a prosperous life. But what he got in return was the betrayal of King Horic and the betrayal of Earl Borg. Ragnar, with the king's sword in hand, sat at the peak. From then on, he was King Ragnar, and the coronation of the new king officially opened a new chapter in the Vikings' conquest of Europe.